Hi everyone, welcome to ELI, the place where you get your daily dose of inspiration for entrepreneurship. And today we have with us Mr. Srinivvasan, who is the founder of Sporjo. Srini is a graduate of IMT Ghaziabad and has worked for companies such as ESPN, Star Sports, Nike, IPL, ISL, and Reliance Sports before starting his own venture. Hi Srini, welcome to ELI.
Thank you. Pleasure's all mine.
Srini, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience, please?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening into this. This is my 20th year in the sports industry, and before that, 4 years in advertising. And as Priyaranjan mentioned, I was working with companies like Nike. Started my career with ESPN Star Sports. Worked in pretty much every department there. Then worked in Nike, where I used to head brand for Nike India. Then joined the BCCI, where I used to head marketing and sponsorship for the BCCI, the IPL, and the Indian national team, and work on the Champions League T20. Then I joined Reliance to set up the ISL. Worked in the ISL for 2.5, 3 years, and then was part of the leadership team for the last 3 years. Working across pretty much every vertical that there is in Reliance Sports.
Okay. Srini, since you belong from the sports industry and many of our audiences are very young and relate quite well with the sports, I'll start with a very interesting question. Can you draw an analogy between sports and entrepreneurship? What is the similarities?
I think the biggest one is sports is you can broadly divide into two parts: individual sport and team sports, right? And actually, both mean the same, because even if you're playing an individual sport, I mean, if Federer is playing, I mean, he's not won it all on his own. Yes, he goes and performs at the court, but he's got a fantastic team behind him, right? So I guess sports is very, very similar to entrepreneurship, wherein it's a team sport, right? I mean, you can have one person being at the front, right? But it does take a lot from a lot of other people. It's like, how do you say, if you can sort of give an example of, say, a wheel, right? For a wheel to move forward, the hub has to be strong and the spokes have to be strong. If there are two, three spokes which break, the wheel will be unstable, right? So it's very similar to sports as well. I mean, the team has to have a hub and spokes. So everybody might not be doing exactly the same thing, but each one of them is playing their part. So whether it's sports or entrepreneurship or life or anything, it is pretty much the same, of interdependence on other people to ensure that your initiative is successful.
Okay. Now coming to the venture you are trying to build, tell us what is Sporjo, what does it do, and what kind of impacts we have been making so far.
We have Sporjo was envisaged 2.5 years back. The company was incorporated a couple of years back, but it actually started in May, and the commercial launch was in July. After having worked for 20 years in the sports industry, I noticed a massive gap. Millions of people want to work in sports. Employers want to hire thousands and thousands of people, but they just can't find the right people. uh, I mean, I was shocked that nobody's tried since I graduated from college, and from B school in '97. I've been looking for opportunities like that. I mean, right now private companies are sending rockets to space, and we don't have a website which tells you how to work in sports, which is like $1 billion industry in India. That's pretty strange. And I guess as every entrepreneur, you first try to solve a problem, and if you're not solving a problem, I don't think I mean, that's the most basic fundamental for a business to exist. And this problem is pretty immense, because sports is still considered an interest or a hobby. It's not considered as a career, right? I mean, I've been fortunate enough to have spent 20 years here, but to a lot of people, and most importantly parents, it seems like it's not a viable career option. So I think, as we move forward, I think we need to first create awareness, because we're building a category. We are not starting a business. And for that to, I mean, I've personally counseled over 40, 50, 60 parents, and hundreds and hundreds of candidates till now. But it all sort of boils down to the same thing. When I was small, people used to say, खेलोगे कूदोगे होगे खराब पढ़ोगे लिखोगे बनोगे नवाब. I mean that's not true anymore, right? Because sports is a viable career option. I'm sitting right in front of you.
Okay. Now, Srini, I would like to understand the journey you took to become an entrepreneur. I understand it has been a long journey, and there would have been different events in your life that would have said to you, no, you are an entrepreneur, you are an entrepreneur. Now, take us through your story.
As I mentioned, figure out this problem, but didn't know how to solve it. Because otherwise, somebody else would have, right? While the process seems very simple to me because you've been part of this industry for so long, it may not be that sort of easy to for a lot of people, because as I mentioned, the first thing, awareness is not there, right? I mean, even before you had take for example radio stations, right? I mean, you wouldn't have people having saying I'll become an RJ, or I'll do something as part of a radio station. So I mean, those categories came up, right? A few years back there was no fantasy gaming, and now it is really massive, being led by Dream 11. So I guess from my perspective, when I identified this, the first thing that you sort of say, okay, am I solving a problem? Yes, you're solving a problem. The second step is, am I adding value to people? Yeah. The moment those two were checked, I knew that whatever you do, it's bound to sort of do well, because you are solving someone's problem, adding value, and in the process probably transforming a few lives, right? Because a lot of us feel that sports, it's really cool, this that, and when you sort of find a job you love, you'll never have to work a day in your life, right? But people still need to be aware of what does it take, how do you need to get trained for it, how skilled you are, where you stand right now, what do you need to do to ensure that you do well in your job. And it doesn't become a job, it stays with you as a career. Having one job and trying it out is okay, but working in it for a long time is what will sort of give people, at least like me, it gave me a lot of satisfaction. So I guess once I figured that out, it was very important to say, okay, how do you start? That process was a bit challenging, because you needed to you couldn't ask anyone. There were no past examples. There was nothing for you to sort of refer to. So we did everything right from the beginning, whether building our product, and most importantly doing a research on the industry. So we commissioned KPMG to do a first ever white paper on sports jobs in the country. Because if you ask someone in India how many people play cricket or how many people play football, you won't have an answer. But today, if you ask them how many jobs are there, you will have an answer, because that's the basis for a lot of investors ask me, have you estimated the market size, etc. But what's really important is to know, yes, are there enough jobs? Yes, there are. Right now, second step would be to tell people about those jobs. Yeah. Third step would be to ensure, okay, how fit are you for those jobs? And the fourth one would be training them, and the fifth one eventually would be getting them that job. So I guess that's the sort of process and a clear meritocratic scientific pathway that we've sort of that we're trying to establish for the sports industry. Because right now, if you ask people, they randomly apply on LinkedIn, employers post on LinkedIn, but suddenly you get 1,000 applications. I mean, how will you choose? There has to be a slightly more scientific way of doing this, right?
Okay. Okay. A lot of entrepreneurs we see in our show, they're very young, probably in their 20s. And it is a very easy decision for them to choose the path of entrepreneurship, because they have been seeing a lot of entrepreneurs coming out of their colleges, and a lot of things happening in the startup world. Also, they have got a lot of energy, they don't have any obligations yet. But I'd like to ask you this question. You became an entrepreneur uh, after a good amount of time in a corporate career. What made you to quit that path of full-time job and a stable career and get into uncertainties?
Very good question. I still think sometime why, yeah. But you know what? It's entrepreneurship is not about age. I mean, classic cases you hear Colonel Sanders, right? I mean, how many times did he do to after, before being successful? McDonald's, right? How long did it take for him to sort of find the right thing? I guess as I told you before, the two things are uh, figuring out that this problem exists, finding this problem, and adding value. Again, like I said, entrepreneurship is not as much about age. I think it's about a lot of experience as well. You gain wisdom through a journey. If I had started this in when I was after my job at ESPN, I wouldn't know what brand would be, because I wouldn't have worked in Nike. I wouldn't have worked on the commercials of cricket. I wouldn't have set up a league I wouldn't have been part of the team which set up the ISL, or I wouldn't have been part of the leadership team. So and in that process, you sort of make a lot of connections as well, right? And if you're sort of doing something in the same industry, it always helps. Starting very, very young is very different. You have a different kind of energy. Now you have responsibilities. Yes, it was tough to sort of quit a job where which is absolutely stable, especially in sports. You're in a leadership team working across so many sports. No other company will give you that kind of an exposure. But I guess the most important thing for me was solving that problem and adding a lot of value.
Okay. Srini, I'd like to understand, when you found a problem and you had the expertise to solve it. Uh, at some point, you would have required more people to execute your vision. For that, you would have enrolled few people in your venture. How do you go about when adding people to your vision or venture? What is the process you follow when you enroll people?
We are in the process of hiring people, so our process is pretty much standard for everybody. What we sort of see is, do you have do you share that vision, first of all, right? And do you have that hunger or fire? And of course, you need to be proficient in what you're doing. These three things, I think we are the Sporjo formula is passion plus personality plus proficiency, and not just passion, which helps you succeed in sports. So you have to have the right amount of passion for sport. You should know your sport. You should have the right proficiency, which is why what I'm hiring you for. I mean, if I'm hiring someone in digital or marketing, I expect you to have a certain basic knowledge. Not expect you to know everything, but certain basic knowledge as far as execution is concerned. And thirdly, personality. Are you fit for the right job? That's our specialty. I mean, that's Sporjo's specialty to say, if I sort of help, if I assess you, I'll, more than 99% of the times I'll be accurate that you will be most likely to succeed in this kind of a role. So that's very important for us, because we don't want the wrong people in the wrong jobs, right? So I guess that's the way we go about choosing our team as well. Passion plus personality plus proficiency. And as an entrepreneur, you realize that you would need a lot of people. So there are two ways to look at it. One is I get in the business and then add more people, or I'll get in the people who will get me the business. Yeah, I'm option two here, which is get the people who will get you the right amount of business, because they would have seen the growth of that. I mean, if you build everything and then hire people, I don't think there's sort of any point. But yes, you had to ensure that you get the right people, train them. You have to pay them as well. So which is why, I mean, we've got some excellent investors who helped us, who are still helping us stay the course till such time that we become self-sustained and stand on our feet.
Speaking of finance, how did you manage the funds initially? Did you bootstrap on your own, or was it started from investor money, right from the very beginning?
No, it was my money for. I mean, not exactly mine. I mean, me and my wife's money uh, for about 8-9 months, and we've invested quite a lot in this vision. After which investor money started trickling in, but till then the idea was only on paper. Once it sort of saw the light of the day, we saw a lot more people, looking at saying, how can we sort of come in? And once you sort of start getting paid users, you tend to, I mean, the traction is always higher in the investor community. But initially, when the idea was on paper, it was like, yeah, but how do you scale it up? How do you reach millions, etc. So initially, it was slightly tough, but once you sort of build the traction, it's there for people to see right now. because the product is up and running. So from the stage of conceptualization to it being on the road, and even after the product is launched, it's important to get a certain critical mass. So right now we have over 250 paid users right now, and we need to see how we grow it into thousands and to tens of thousands to eventually millions.
Okay. Uh, now, I'd like to go through what are the challenges you faced as an entrepreneur so far, and which of those challenges resulted in failures of you as an entrepreneur, as well failure of the venture you are building.
So right now we're still in the initial days. So I wouldn't say failure as such, but what we are sort of seeing is, like I mentioned earlier, awareness. There is no awareness about careers in sports. So to build that awareness, it takes quite some time. For example, tomorrow, if um, baseball is to be launched in India, right? Not too many people are aware of forget baseball, American football, which is even more complicated, right? Has to be launched in India. I mean, how do you sort of start? So you have to start, bottom up and top down. Having NFL play 2 matches in India is not going to cut it, right? You need to start at the grassroots as well. Similarly, what we're trying to do is it has to work like this. We have to start from the grassroots to build awareness, saying yes, sports is a career, sports is a career, sports is a career. Go top down by getting people jobs there, right, in the industry. So I think that is a process which sort of will take some time, but seeing the initial response, I mean, we've sort of done pretty well. Over 16,000 people on LinkedIn, absolutely organically, without spending any money. Doing well in terms of creating that content which gets people hooked on. We're doing a lot of other activities. We've already placed 25 people, lots of them interns. Initially, we placed all of them for free, so that it'll be good for both, because the pandemic, it'll be good for both the employers as well as the candidate. We're placing a lot of full-time people right now. In fact, we've just placed 3 in January. We hope to sort of continue that momentum and continue to keep building the whole pyramid, which is bottom up as well as top down. So from that perspective, I think it does take a little time. And as we move on, we'll move to jobs in coaching and jobs in gaming as well.
Okay. Srinivas, being a stakeholder of sports industry, can you tell us what are the different gap areas that are still out there for more entrepreneurs to solve? Why I'm asking this, because many of our listeners, they are watching the fast growth of different sports based ventures like Dream 11 and so on. Can you tell us what are some of the gap areas right now?
Sports is not a business that makes too much money, by the way. So which is why even people who sort of are passionate, barring a few things, right, barring fantasy, barring uh, IPL, right, not other the other business do not make too much money. So from a sports perspective, I think that sort of keeps people slightly away in terms of so are people willing to spend a lot of money for development? They don't usually, which is why I guess there are less and less of entrepreneurs. However, having said that, tech as a support to the entire sporting ecosystem has grown over the years. The entire sports tech industry is going to be in excess of a few $1 billion in the future. And with the influence of tech, sports is growing. Sports is fully reliant on tech, if you see, right? Whether it is the ball touching the bail and the light coming on, or the ball crossing the goal line and a beep on the referee's wrist. So, or reversing a decision, which sort of used to be controversial earlier. And the same goes for badminton, tennis, pretty much every sport, right? So, and using tech to enhance player performance, etc. So, I think with the influence of tech, there'll be a lot more entrepreneurs who'll step in and ensure that any of the constituencies, whether it's players, fans, the federations, the stadiums, the commercial part of sport, all of it will see an uplift very, very soon, in my opinion.
Then coming to the next question, what are the interesting lessons that you have learned as an entrepreneur, both as an entrepreneur and as a corporate employee also, which can shorten the learning curve of people who are watching you right now?
The first step is belief. You need to have belief that whatever I'm doing is going to work, right? And that is backed, has to be backed up by data, a little bit of gut as well, and a lot of research in the industry. I mean, even I get a lot of proposals from people saying that I have this idea and I want to sort of make it work, but you may not have the right experience. Have you done the research? Have you sort of, or at least pilot tested it, or at least done something to that extent? So I think having belief backed by a lot of data and a little bit of gut is probably the most important thing to succeed, especially in sports here in India. And I think what is also important is as I mentioned earlier, I mean, is your idea really solving a problem? Yeah, if it's solving a problem, and if for example I have to launch a fantasy game, and it's no different from anyone else, right? So what I'm saying is the chances of that making it may, but the chances of that making it right to the top may be slightly difficult. So it has to be unique. It has to be solving a problem, right? And uh, my most important thing is adding value. Is it adding value?
Okay. Srini, what would be your message to someone who is just like you but 20 years younger than you?
I would say go for it. If the like I said, if it checks on all these parameters, whether it is solving a problem, it's adding value, go for it. Absolutely go for it. Don't think of but what I'm saying is it has to be backed by a lot of research, which we did before we launched. We did not just say, we wake up one day and say we are helping people getting jobs in sports. It took us almost 13 months to build our product and reach the way it is, whether it's our assessment, whether it's our consulting modules, our online modules, our projects, our relationships with companies. How do you select them? How do you shortlist them? How do you filter them? How do you guide them? How do you train them and then get them a job? It's taken us 13 months. So with testing, with multiple rounds of testing, with multiple rounds of back and forth. So I think you need to have if it's solving a problem, I mean, for the sake of repeating, if it's solving a problem, adding value, and you believe that it works, backed with a lot of data research and market information, absolutely go for it.
Srini, what is the vision you have for Sporjo? What is the ultimate product or the venture you want to build in the long run?
So Sporjo is a company which assesses, guides, trains, and gets people jobs in the sports industry. Yeah. Right now we are looking at RTGs right now as graduates plus, who are looking for a job right now, or who want to change careers from other industries, etc. A year later we'll get into schools, because kids at that age should also know that working in sports is not just playing in sports and therefore working in it. So we'll have the Sporjo content in languages, because sports grows on the back of languages. Just because someone's working in Telangana and is passionate about football does not mean, and does not know English, does not mean they should not be working in sports, right? They should be. So how can we enable people like those? As I mentioned earlier, jobs in coaching and jobs in gaming, which are going to be pretty big in India, are next to sort of processes which we're going after. We're also launching Sporjo Plus, which is jobs for senior executives and people already working in sports, and Sporjo Mentor, where we'll mentor a candidate through their sporting journey. Now, with all this over the next 1 year, we believe that Sporjo would be, we want it to be the only destination where people think of working in sports, and the first thing they think of is Sporjo. Also doing thought leadership things like the white paper from KPMG, which I mentioned earlier. And that's the idea, to lead this category, to build this category, and to ensure that there is a very strong foundation, that when India hosts global events, you should not be getting people from outside, right? You should have your own people trained, very well done, who've managed a lot of these events on whichever side, it's operations, commercial, marketing, sales, whatever it is. Yeah, you should have your own workforce. So the vision of Sporjo is to Our mission is to convert passion to profession in sports, and our vision is to ensure that India has at least 500,000 skilled people working in sports over the next 10 years.
Okay. Probably this is my last question to you. Assume that in next 3 4 years time, Sporzo becomes a billion-dollar company, or what we call as unicorn. When you see Sporzo as a billion-dollar company, then what are the products or services it would be offering? Um,
There may be a lot more at that point in time, but I guess the biggest thing would be to see. I mean, right now the line that we are thinking is to build talent, right? So for till the near future, we won't deviate from that. Our job is to build talent, and we'll find multiple ways of building talent. For example, it could be ensuring that there is a lot more focus on women's sport, right? And women coming out and working in sport. A lot of focus on amateur sport, right? How do you get skilled people to conduct amateur sport, right? Then there could be differently able people. Yeah. So who maybe were athletes or who want to work in sports, how do you help them? So while our vertical is very clear, building talent, it's the different verticals that we will target to build talent that we may look to expand later. But right now it's building talent, and we will continue to add these verticals as we move along.
Awesome. On this note, I would like to close this session. Any final message you have before we end the session?
The only message, like I mentioned, is if you believe you're solving a problem and adding value, go for it.
Yeah. It was a pleasure to host you here at ELI. I think our audience would have got good lessons and would have connected very well, because sports is a kind of a very young people's game. Thanks for your time, Srini, and our best wishes for sports.
Thank you so much, Priyaranjan. Pleasure.
So that is it for today's episode, folks. We'll be back with another exciting entrepreneur. Stay tuned to ELI.